the Committee on Environment, Climate, and Legacy to order. Let the record show that it is now 3:05, Thursday, February 26, 2026. And we now have quorum. They may not be folks from remote, but if there's one, we'll inform you. We have a little technical problem right now, so we're working on kind of connecting our laptop into the screen here. So it's good that the first on our agenda here doesn't require PowerPoint presentation. Just some safety protocol and also civility. I did say it last week, but I remind again that no yelling, no standing other than the security. Our senator will be okay as well. No sign, just honor your neighbors. And if you need any help, we have Sergeant on here as well to help us. Thank you to those members that joined us on the History Center tour last Tuesday. And those who made it to a tour, Chair Pappas say that she might approve your bonding request. So just so that those didn't make it a little envy of us who had attended the tour, bonding tour to the History Center. So we have three things on our agenda here today. We have the DNR Outdoor Recreation Endorsement Report and MPCA on Annual Permitting Efficiency Report. And then also Senator Pa on the Expiration Removal of Crossbow Hunting, Senate File 1251, and Senator Pa is here. And Senator Pa, whenever you're ready, you can make your way to the testimony table. So welcome to the Environment Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Herr and members, for this opportunity to present in front of you. I have the bill SF 1251, which is expanding the use of crossbow during archery season. And Chair, I do have an author's amendment, the A2.
Oh, yes, the A2 amendment. Senator Wiesenberg, can you motion that?
I would like to move the A2.
Okay, all in favor of A2 amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion prevail. Okay, Senator Pa, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So before I get started, I just want to thank Chair Herr, yourself, Senator Wiesenberg, and Senator Drazowski for being co-authors on this bill. As a woman, I struggle with compound bow. I've been trying for many years as a hunter, but drawing and holding that weight consistently and accurately is very difficult. And I still continue to practice, but crossbow makes a humongous difference in my ability to be able to hunt. Not because of my lack of commitment or the lack of training that I do with compound bow, but really with crossbow, it doesn't depend on just my physical strength. And as a woman, it's much harder for me to pull at the pound or the strength that it needs to be able to do I would say, humane and clean shot. And so that's always been difficult. And when you cannot confidently execute a clean shot, you risk wounding an animal instead of harvesting it ethically. And that has always been something, as a hunter myself, that I've struggled with. Crossbow allows me to hunt responsibly and with accuracy and confidence and respect for animals. And this bill is truly about access and ethical hunting. When the legislature previously expanded crossbow to use during archery season, we committed to monitoring impacts, and to date we have found no evidence that those statutory changes have negatively impacted deer or turkey populations, which were the two populations we were most concerned about. What we have seen, however, in the 2 years is opportunity. Opportunity for women like myself who lack the physical strength to master compound bows and to be able to hunt. And then opportunity for young hunters who are just starting out, an opportunity for older hunters whose shoulders no longer allow them to draw a traditional bow, and opportunities for recruitment and retention of our hunting community that is aging and also shrinking. So members, I'm asking for your support on this bill that ensures that those who want to hunt ethically have the ability to do so. And so I respectfully ask for your support to sunset the date of June 30th, 2026, to eliminate that so that we can have crossbow hunting. Thank you. And I do have a testifier today.
Okay, welcome, Elizabeth. Do state your name for the record and then go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Herr, Minority Lead Green, and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Wafel, and I am here testifying on behalf of the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association and its 20,000 members to provide the organization's strong support for this legislation. Minnesota has a proud history of conservation rooted in responsible hunting and sound wildlife management. In an era where kids and adults often spend more time staring at their phones than looking across an open field or through the woods, it's essential that hunting opportunities remain accessible and inclusive if we want to sustain that legacy. Crossbows can play a vital role in allowing Minnesotans to participate safely and effectively in archery seasons, and that's why this legislation is so very important. As Senator Pa explained very well, crossbows really expand participation. Let's face it, as we age, or face other challenges, some activities, such as using a vertical bow, they're just not that easy anymore. In fact, I might say for someone like me, it's practically impossible. Allowing crossbows during the archery season will help retain experienced hunters who might otherwise not be able to continue, as well as helping to bring new folks into hunting. Our hunting sort of lifestyle and the conservation model in Minnesota can't survive if we don't hold on to those who are doing it, but also expand to others. And this is one of the best ways to do it. The Minnesota DNR relies on hunter participation as a cornerstone of its conservation models. Expanding access through crossbow inclusion supports that recruitment, retention, and reactivation, which is essential for maintaining sustainable wildlife management funding. I think as the DNR is going to talk about in a few minutes, it's hard to get funding. This is a great way to sustain that funding. Finally, I just want to say, when you look at the wide range of authors on this bill, Senator Pa, Senator Herr, Senator Wiesenberg, and Senator Drazkowski, when's the last time you've seen that lineup on a single bill? It's probably been a while, but it really goes to, I think, the benefits and the broad interest in this proposed change. In summary, conservation and preserving public land are so very important to Minnesota. Passing this bill to continue crossbow inclusion can really help ensure that we add and retain many more hunters to ensure that that work continues for years to come. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. And let's see, just members, in your package, there's a letter of support in regard to this bill. There's 3 letters. One is from the Deer Hunter Association, the other is from Bow Hunter, and the other one is from Minnesota Hunter. So I want to call Mr. Nick Amuro from Minnesota Bow Hunter to come testify. Welcome, and state your name for the record.
My name is Nick Amrud. I appreciate being here, Senator Herr, and honorable committee members. So I am the president of Minnesota Bow Hunters, started in 1946. We do continue to strongly oppose the continued full inclusion of crossbows into archery seasons, and we hope that you would consider adding an amendment for a compromise. We have over 1,000 petition signatures asking for some form of a compromise other than full inclusion or returning back to 60+ and disability allowances. Crossbows are often portrayed as a silver bullet to hunter recruitment and retention, even though it has not produced those benefits in any other states. We are transitioning hunters from one season to another, but we are not adding new. The best weapon option for overall recruitment and retention is a rifle, and our existing firearm and muzzleloader seasons that offer the best, easiest to use, and most advantageous weapons are losing hunters at a higher rate than archery seasons. Instead of undermining what is working for archery recruitment and retention, we hope that you will evaluate why those better rut and MEA break youth hunting opportunities with the best weapons are not as attractive for R3 as they should and need to be. The expected substantial increase in pre-firearm season harvest resulting from full crossbow inclusion is going to have a negative impact on firearm hunters' opportunity and overall experience, further degrading our general firearm season while pushing more hunters towards less effective crossbows. Michigan has lost 30% of their hunters in the past 30 years, and they have had full crossbow inclusion for over half of that since 2009. This is not the solution it is marketed to be. This bill is going to sell a lot of crossbows to existing hunters, but it is not solving any of the underlying problems that are causing potential hunters to spend their time elsewhere. Land access to quality hunting opportunities that are worth the cost and effort while also providing a better return on investment than other readily available activities is not plentiful, and fixing that is something that we should work on. We respectfully ask that you consider a compromise, and there are a lot of viable options to do this. Thank you for your time, and hope to see you guys again sometime.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions to Senator Pa or the testifier, both testifiers? And the DNR is also present, so question can go to them, or if we need to, yes, Senator Weisenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this would be directed towards the DNR. I don't remember the exact numbers, but in, let's say, the last decade or however many amount of years, what is the amount of big game deer hunters we've lost? Because I believe it's gone down a decent amount. Whoever can answer that. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Rivers. Welcome, and state your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, members, Pat Rivers, Deputy Director with the Division of Fish and Wildlife. I believe we're around 400,000 deer hunters now. It has fallen partly because of the greatest generation is aging out of hunting sports. So we'll continue to see that slow decline, but we are working on R3 recruitment, retention, reactivation activities, and this is one way we can possibly do that.
Senator Weisenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And that's what I was thinking. If we're losing hunters, then let's have some way to bring them back and keep them. And this will do nothing to the deer population because there's already less hunters than there were before. And as we continue to lose deer hunters, the deer population is going to be just fine. And, if someone shoots your big buck, that's just the way it is. It's hunting. We need to go, we need to hunt, we need to encourage people to get in the woods. And if this helps people get out in the woods, then great. We had this argument, I probably wasn't alive, but back when we went from, long bows to compound bows, same thing. I shoot a compound bow. I don't have a crossbow, but I can hold my compound bow for a long time, and I pull the trigger and let the arrow fly. I don't see it as any different. So, and when you talk about responsible hunting, it's up to the hunter to not make bad shots, no matter what type of weapon they have. If they're not a responsible hunter, they're just not a responsible hunter. Doesn't matter if they have a bow or a crossbow or a shotgun or a rifle. We just have to make sure that people are being responsible and not, taking shots that they shouldn't be taking. So this will be fine. The population will be okay. And I think it's a good tool to help recruit and retain hunters. Thank you.
Sarah McCune.
Thank you. I just had a question for Senator Pa. And I don't know if any of the testifiers would want to address this too. I was just looking over the materials and listening to the testimony, and I'm wondering about this proposal for a kind of compromise where the licenses would be separate. And I'm just wondering if you've rejected that idea, why, and if for those that are promoting having a separate license, from what I'm reading and gathering, it sounds like it could be valuable to have just the data from having a separate license, like who is seeking that specifically and what is the rate of participation, all of that. That might be just valuable information to have. So I'm just wondering how that has shaken out with your discussions. Thanks.
Senator Pa, Mr. River.
Thank you, Senator McEwen, for that question. And I'm open to that discussion, and I don't think that necessarily that we're opposed to a separate license. I think what I may need more discussion on is whether or not if it's an additional license that has a additional cost that would be much more expensive, where cost is a barrier for entry, that may be a concern, but not necessarily a separate license. And we can continue that conversation, open for that. I do just want to say that the report that was done by the DNR is actually really great reading. And it has shown in that research that since the passing of this, there has been a growth in female youth hunters and female hunters. And I can attest to that as someone who hunts and now am excited about hunting, because I can actually use a tool that I can use responsibly to hunt. And to Senator Wiesenberg's point, I often will not take a shot on my compound bow if I don't think that that shot is going to actually be able to harvest an animal versus just wound it. And that makes it hard for me to be excited about hunting in an ethical way. And crossbow just gives me that tool that I know when I go hunt, I'm hunting it ethically, and I'm making sure that when I do, that I'm not just wounding animals. But I want to point out that I know that the previous testifier talked about how this isn't growing, growing hunters is just shifting. And I totally disagree with that. The data that comes from the report of the DNR, I've read through the entire paper and report, and it shows that there are increases, and mostly among youth that are female, and then women hunters. And so I'm excited about that. But yes, I will continue those conversations. Thank you, Senator McEwen.
Director Rivers, any response to that question? Or?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Senator McEwen, we did have a way to differentiate between crossbows and vertical bows, and we can work that into our ELS system going forward.
Okay, any questions? Senator Drakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just thank you, Senator Pa, for the bill, wonderful bill. I think we need to make it as easy for hunters as possible. If we start requiring a separate license for them, that's going to make it more difficult. And I think about the hunter that may have both a vertical bow and a crossbow, and one day they may want to hunt with one, and another day they may want to hunt with another one. We certainly can't be charging them twice for the same attempt to harvest an animal during the bow season. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Hoffman wanted to speak, but he can wait. So I heard you say something to the ELS system. I have no idea what they're doing, but to speak to what Senator Drazowski said, I mean, in my opinion, you could just say, are you going to hunt with a crossbow, and say yes, and it's on there. So, but it would be the same license and not cost any more. It's just a bow license probably, and you could check, yes, I'm going to use a crossbow, but then you could still use a bow. And then, and then would you, so I guess to ask the question, what you just said, do you check out harvest what you harvested with then? So if you, let's say you use a bow, you could just say, I did it with a bow or a crossbow.
Senator Powell.
When you register the deer.
Mr. Rivers.
Yeah, you guys, with your survey, you asked it in the survey, but you're not doing it with ticketing the animal. Yeah.
Mr. Rivers.
I might need to phone a friend on that, because that's,
Phone a friend.
Barb did the report just recently in the House, and I can bring her up. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Thanks.
certainly.
Just jumped in the last minute here, sorry, but I think that, to Mr. Rivers' point, I think the data is probably valuable on the harvest data. Not so much how you buy the license, but, you know, after the fact, like, how did you harvest it? Because I think I'd like to know. I mean, I think there's some points in these letters that made sense to me. But yeah, definitely buying 2 licenses would be a little bit outside of my comfort level, but.
Okay, well, welcome, and state your name for the records.
Mr. Chair, for the record, my name is Barbara Keller, and I'm the Big Game Program Leader with Minnesota DNR. Chair, Senator, if I heard the question correctly, it was if we could ask a question at registration about what weapon type hunters used? And what they harvested. And we started that in 2023 when this change came to be. We did add a question at registration asking whether hunters used a vertical bow or a crossbow to take their deer or turkey when they're registering that animal. So we do have that information, and that's in the report. Unfortunately, we didn't have that before the change was made, but we did also send out a survey after 2024, and we've estimated about 21% of our hunters were likely already using crossbows due to the age allowance at that time.
Okay, any question or comment from members? And I just had a little comment, but not about hunting, but just my observation at the hunting range. This is not regarding anything about hunting, because archery is a sport as well. You know, people come with precursor and compound bow, and now with crossbow myself. I still see younger people find more interest in the compound bow, you know, and us who are past 60 use the crossbow, and in that sense. And then there are sportsmen that use recurse as well. Athletes maybe training themselves on the recurse. So, you know, it doesn't change the cultural want, but in terms of hunting game, I think having two generations together could help boost the hunting population. And also, like you said, Senator Pa, could increase women in hunting as well. So thank you, and this bill will go directly to the floor. And so I want to ask you, Senator Hoffman, will you move?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you have room for one more on this bill, Senator Pa. Can I get added, please?
Yes, Senator Pa.
Chair, absolutely, Senator Hoffman. Thank you.
Perfect answer. With that, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that Senate File 1251 do pass and be sent to general orders.
As amended.
As amended.
All right, all in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, motion prevail.
Thank you, Chair and
Okay,
members.
thank you, Senator Pa. Okay, next on our agenda is the DNR Outdoor Recreation Endorsement Report. And I'd like to invite Mr. Ben Burgee and Commissioner Sarah Stroman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair,
Welcome.
members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am Sarah Stroman. I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. With me is Ben Burgee. Ben is the Regional Director out of Bemidji, our Northwest region at the Department of Natural Resources. And we are very happy to be here this afternoon to present the Outdoor Recreation Endorsement Legislative Report. We have very high hopes for what this concept represents for funding conservation and outdoor recreation in Minnesota. Before Director Burgee talks specifically about the framework that is contained in that Outdoor Recreation Endorsement Report, I do just want to provide a little bit of context that this concept and idea was born out of an initiative we started in 2021 to envision a future for funding conservation and outdoor recreation in a way that was long-term thinking and sustainable. That effort became known as our For the Outdoors initiative, and while not in your packet, this initial report is on the DNR website. And it is the culmination of a year-long effort around public engagement to engage partners in conservation, outdoor recreation, members of the public, to think about that future and what steps we collectively can take to reach that future. I want to highlight a couple of things that are conclusions from that effort in this report that I think apply to the outdoor recreation endorsement. First of all, we heard, and you're going to come to understand why we call this For the Outdoors. There were 4 key issues or concerns that the public raised with us around conservation and outdoor recreation funding. First is that generally there's a lack of investment in conservation and outdoor recreation, and that lack of investment stresses the very resources that Minnesotans value, and that additional investment in these areas would benefit all Minnesotans. Second, people told us that there is a lack of shared stewardship and shared responsibility for conservation actions and recreation resources. The idea that some communities and some users pay for conservation and outdoor recreation access, but all Minnesotans benefit from it, whether they are direct users or not. And so people thought there could be a better alignment between the investments the state makes and those broad economic and other benefits. Third, that funding restrictions and a lack of predictability limit the ability to successfully meet conservation and outdoor recreation goals. And that more certainty would allow the DNR to be more nimble, more accountable, and plan and manage more in line with natural systems and infrastructure lifespan. And then fourth and finally, people told us that they believe there's not a single silver bullet funding solution that's going to solve these other problems. But the funding system will probably, it is complex and probably will remain complex. The simple solution is not enough. But they had ideas. And so that's kind of the next piece. There were 4 kind of pillars of that future vision. Again, these came from what people told us. First, that future generations benefit from a sustained and improved outdoor recreation experiences and the conservation of natural resources. Second, that Minnesotans work together to support diverse outdoor recreation opportunities and conservation of our state's natural features. Third, that conservation and outdoor recreation opportunities equitably meet the needs of all Minnesotans. And finally, that conservation and outdoor recreation align with and are integrated into the needs, or into Minnesota's state priorities. So taking these 4 vision pillars, we then, again, working with cross-section of Minnesotans, identified 4 steps in 4 years that we could take to collectively secure this stable and predictable future funding for natural resources and outdoor recreation. These are optimizing the use of current funding, increasing opportunities for direct support, exploring the use and application of fees, and then finally securing stable and predictable base and operational funding. So we are working on all 4 of those steps that are outlined in this For the Outdoors report, but we're here today to really talk about that 4th step around secure, stable and predictable base funding. As we dug into each one of these further in subsequent years with, again, partners and members of the public, that happened through online surveys, in-person focus groups and meetings. One of the ideas that emerged out of that was this concept of an outdoor recreation endorsement. It is a great concept that allows us to actually reduce some of the costs that Minnesotans currently pay to access public lands. And then it simplifies sort of the bureaucratic process, enhances collaboration among state agencies, and ultimately actually enhances access that people get. So I'd like to turn it over to Director Berge to talk a little bit more about the framework. He has some unique experience as the former Parks Director in Wisconsin, and we're fortunate enough now to have him in Minnesota, as I said, as our Northwest Regional Director, and he was a key author of this framework, so I will hand it to him.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members. As Commissioner mentioned, the outdoor recreation endorsement really is an exciting concept, and I think the 2 key points that the Commissioner just made was simplification of process for Minnesotans and lower fees. And this model accomplishes that. It's very simply just an outdoor recreation endorsement is a simple way for Minnesotans to support conservation and outdoor recreation work across the outdoor recreation system. Also, in addition to gaining access to our state parks and recreation areas. So an individual opting into this endorsement, it would replace that annual park sticker that many of you are probably accustomed to purchasing. On the screen, I know it's behind you, you can't see, is an example of other states. There are several other states that have enacted this model. I think one of the best is probably the state of Michigan. They've had a model similar to this in place for nearly 15 years. And there's an example there from their registration, their vehicle registration, on what it could look like. And so the very foundation of the model is the opportunity to purchase at time of registration or renewal of your vehicle. And you're probably asking the question, how can we charge less but end up with significantly more funding through time? And that is the opportunity to purchase. So right now, we currently have roughly 7 to 8% of Minnesotans, I should say the licensed vehicles here in Minnesota, that buy some sort of pass, either an annual pass or a day pass each year. And the only people that are having to make that decision are roughly 400,000 times that decision's made. By putting the decision on the vehicle registration, we have roughly 5.4 million registered vehicles here in Minnesota. And so that decision is made not only by people that already know the benefits of our state and public land, our state public lands, but also folks that may have an interest in it and say, you know what, that's a good deal. I'm going to buy that so this summer or maybe this spring, this fall, I can get outside. And not only does it support the state parks and allow you entry, it's also supporting conservation and recreation work on all the other DNR managed lands. So aquatic management areas, state wildlife areas, state forests, and scientific natural areas. And I want to explain a piece of the model that's key. We're looking at this as an opt-in model. Michigan is an opt-in model. Some other states, such as Montana, is an opt-out, and they're very different. An opt-in model allows an individual to make a decision to participate. An opt-out model would be if you don't check a box, you're automatically including and paying the fee. And we don't think that's our recommendation here is to have an opt-in and allow Minnesotans to make a decision at time of registration if they want to participate. So what are the key benefits of this model? I talked about it already, significant lower costs, and I'm going to get to the fee structure in a while, but you may be aware our current annual pass is $35. We're actually looking at this long-term as a $19 ORE, so almost cutting it in half. But you're going to see we actually want to start lower than that. And like many things that you purchase or you're involved with acquiring, we want to actually discount it in the first 5 years to encourage participation. So I'll get to that fee structure, but it would nearly cut it in half. Easier and more convenient. We talked about simplification. Currently, you're registering your car. You either go online or you go to a park or a rec area and buy a sticker. This would be a one-stop shop, make it very simple for people to acquire access and to support this work. I've been in outdoor recreation for 25 years, and this next bullet I think is a complaint I've heard for 25 years. No more need to apply and remove windshield stickers that are sticky on people's windshields. If you purchase that sticker, you know that they can be hard to get off. And then I think the last piece here that's critical for Minnesotans, we know how important our outdoor resources are, our natural resources, and those places we get outside. We knew that before the pandemic, but I think if you look at the numbers of people that now recognize the value of outdoor recreation and public lands for mental and physical health, it's nearly everyone. And so this allows us, as the commissioner said, some stability in the future in terms of funding to perform the work. For the outdoor recreation system, as I mentioned, it's stability and funding, and then also it allows us to look broadly. It's about looking at experiences for people, funding experiences across our managed lands, not just within the administrative boundaries that we have inside state government, but it's looking across the landscape and applying funding towards experiences that people expect regardless of what kind of land, DNR managed land they're on. Creating the Minnesota model, I mentioned this attractive pricing point. And so what's really critical here is that all of our other fees align with the fee that's charged for this, because this is about helping people navigate into this in a way that promotes obviously a cheaper rate for them. And so the way we structure the pricing is very critical for any other permits that we may have. It's also key that we integrate this into all ways that people register or renew vehicles, whether that be through online methods, through a deputy registrar, through a kiosk, through a mail-in, or through a car dealer at a time of purchase. And then the last piece is also really key, and maybe something we don't think about, but marketing is really important. This has to be marketed. You have to make people aware of the opportunity. And so there has to be commitment, and we've been working with the other state agencies on this, on marketing this, so people are aware of the opportunity. So proposed purchase options for the outdoor recreation endorsement, I've mentioned this would be purchased through your vehicle registration or renewal. We obviously know some people may not choose to opt in at that time, and so we would also sell an on-site endorsement. And so they'd be able to opt into this when they came to a park or rec area. One thing we heard throughout this engagement in the last few years has been an acknowledgement that there's an appetite potentially to charge a little bit more to our out-of-state guests that come here to Minnesota. And so part of this you're going to see is an increase in that current annual fee. So vehicles that are not registered in Minnesota would still have an annual sticker, and you're going to see here we're going to propose a slight increase in that fee. And then other options, we would continue to have all of the discounted or free options for entry that we currently have. Those would not go away. The other thing I will mention here too is the state parks plate would continue to exist in this system as well. Some of you may or may be not aware of that. So here's the pricing structure we talked about. So you'll see by year 5, we're looking at a 5-year implementation plan. So that $19 at year 5 is where we intend to head. That's our recommendation to, obviously, here today. But offering a discounted in that first 4 years, starting at $15 for the first 2 years, $17 on 3 and 4, and then we'd fully be implemented by year 5. You can see the on-site ORE is a little more expensive. That's done intentionally to drive people to do this at time of vehicle registration. And so there would be, you can see across the board, it would cost $12 additional if you were to do it on site. And again, when that renewal comes up the following year, people would remember, yep, I'm going to check that box. I can do this for 15, 17, 19, depending on what year it was. Here you'll see the non-resident permits an increase. The daily permit increased to 15 and the non-resident annual to 45. This puts us more in line with some of our neighboring states that have similar park systems to Minnesota. Wisconsin is at 15 for a non-resident daily right now. Michigan's a few dollars less than that, but all very close. And so this really does put us in line. Annual stickers right in line as well at that $45. I think the big piece on this slide really talks about how this model encourages collaboration among state agencies, illustrating how a One Minnesota approach can benefit Minnesotans through simpler process and reduced fees. And so you'll see that the agencies and partners we've been working with, Department of Public Safety, Department of Corrections, and the deputy registrars. And so each entity would have a unique and specific role in this program, from creating it with DPS within their existing system to the sale of these through the deputy registrars, car dealers, et cetera. Fulfillment by corrections, they fulfill the vehicle tabs that we're currently buying, and then DNR to invest in these outdoor spaces. Revenue projections, you can see here on this slide. Just to give a little backdrop, we currently, depending on the year, bring in between 8 and 9 million on state park permits. And as I mentioned earlier, roughly 7 to 8% of all registered passenger vehicles buy a permit during a year. We expect, because of the marketing and putting this decision in front of the 5.4 million times that decision had to be made in the price reduction, that many more people would prescribe. If we look at Michigan as an example, I've worked with Michigan leadership for almost a decade now to learn from their success. They've been implemented now for 15 years. They've more than tripled their revenue in that 15 years. And they've gone, as I mentioned, we're at about a 7 to 8% prescribership. They started at roughly 13%. And they're at over 40% of all vehicles licensed in the state of Michigan have a They're equivalent to an outdoor recreation endorsement. They call it a passport. And so they've over tripled their participation, over tripled their revenue in the 15 years since implementation. The important point to this slide as well is it takes time to build that revenue. This isn't going to happen in year one. It happens through marketing, people recognizing the value for what they're investing. And so we expect in 10 years that we would be nearing that 30% participation rate here in Minnesota. Last slide talks about the priorities for the revenues of this model. And this is a really important point. The state parks program would, there'd be a lost opportunity to sell annual permits to residents. That's something that we wouldn't do. It would be replaced by the outdoor recreation endorsement. And so first and foremost, there is a need to replace and augment existing permit revenues to the state park system. And so the parks program would not be negatively impacted. In fact, they'd be positively impacted, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in here in number 2. So above and beyond that replacement revenue to parks, we would distribute that money, those revenues, to the different work that's done inside the agency. So outdoor recreation, maintenance, visitor service, conservation, enforcement efforts, et cetera, all that benefit all of the outdoor recreation system lands. So parks would get a fairly significant piece of that in addition to their replacement revenue, but then there'd also be funds that would be available to aquatic management areas, state wildlife areas, state scientific natural areas, and our state forests. And then thirdly here, this program would pay for itself ultimately, meaning revenues from the program would have to cover the administration of the program. And I wish to close with just a short statement here overall on this system. The outdoor recreation system, as we all know, includes more than just our state parks and trails. I just mentioned what they were. I won't name them again. Many of you have probably recreated or been on several of the land types that DNR manages for Minnesotans. While these administrative designations are important inside the Department of Natural Resources, in general, these administrative boundaries are not important to Minnesotans recreating outdoors. It is common within the same day, and this is actually from experience of me talking to someone last summer, for an individual to camp in a state forest campground, hike in a state park, and use an aquatic management area to enjoy time fishing, all in the same day. Providing a consistent quality outdoor experience across all DNR managed lands is our responsibility as public land managers. The outdoor recreation endorsement model creates stability and funding across the outdoor recreation system while also providing flexibility to adapt to changing outdoor recreation trends, setting the Department of Natural Resources up to be successful in meeting the needs of Minnesotans into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berge. Any questions or comment from members? Senator Drukowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, Mr. Berge, I saw, of course, and it sounds like it may be more user-friendly than what we have now, from what I can tell. And I did see the anticipation of how much money that the government's going to take in with this. How many FTEs are you going to be able to shed, and how much are you going to be able to decrease the parks budget in order to recognize the no longer needing the staff to sell the stickers and so forth?
Director Berge, our commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator Druskowski, maybe I'll start and then Director Berge can add if he has something else. This is really about, it's less about trying to reduce the administrative burden of selling the stickers. It's more about trying to fund the, as Director Berge said, the experiences that Minnesotans want in the parks. And we have been in front of the legislature and this committee a number of times seeking an increase to that windshield sticker in order to address the increased operating costs that our parks are experiencing. And we've heard you all unwillingness to fund that. And so what we are trying to do instead is create an opportunity that is easier for people to buy, simply doing it with another transaction, and generating the revenue that is necessary to operate our parks at the service levels that people expect. And so while it will account for us not doing as much of the administration that will be done at the time of vehicle registration. It's really about meeting those service needs that Minnesotans have told us they want to have in parks and on our other lands.
Senator Drukowski?
Mr. Berge.
Mr. Berge. Director Berge.
Chairman, Senator, thanks. I want to add one quick thing. I need to grab this quickly. So I appreciate the question, and having worked on this model for several years and having been the director in a state park system, worked in the state park system here, you know, one of the things that I look to this model to help us with is there is a significant backlog of work in our state parks and on other DNR lands. If any of you have visited our parks, you know that there is a lot of work that needs to get done infrastructure-wise, but a lot of that is day-to-day maintenance that then leads to some of our infrastructure needs. So I don't look at it as a reduction. I look at it as a refocusing and a wise investment of what we have now to help us be successful tomorrow. And so we would potentially be able to repurpose some of that to help us with some of that, with that day-to-day work that needs to get done that will then positively influence our needs into the future.
Senator Drukowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I guess I heard what I expected. I was going to hear that the agency doesn't want to decrease their FTEs that they no longer need for the collection of stickers, but instead they're going to repurpose those folks into some other job or something. It's going to allow government to grow some more, and that's what I expected I would hear in kind of a different set of words. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And this is an alternative to free fee increase. I know that's something that Senator Drukowski, you were concerning about. Yeah. Any other question or comment? Senator Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess what is I was looking at some of the proposed fees and how we deal with residents versus non-residents, and it's the same price. So I was actually on the annual pass, at least that's what I'm understanding. Is there a reason for that? Is it a non-resident? As far as park users go, is there data showing that we have that many non-residents that are using the park system, or is it mostly Minnesotans?
Director Berge.
Mr. Chair, Senator, thanks for the question. So I just looked at some of the numbers in terms of, and you are right, currently we do not differentiate our fees. So that annual sticker that's $35 and our day pass is sold at the same price for in-state and out-of-state. We have, depending on the year, but we sell roughly 400 to 420,000 passes, both annuals and dailies, to Minnesota licensed, or what we anticipate to be Minnesota licensed vehicles, and around 100,000 to non-residents, just under actually. And so we do have more Minnesotans that do visit our parks, but there is a substantial amount of non-residents that do come here, as we have a very well-known system here in the Midwest, and we do see people travel here. And part of the thing with increasing that fee, it wasn't just a number that we just came up with. We also know that we don't want to make it too high and discourage people to come here to recreate. We heard that from some business owners that we talked to, and we want to keep it at a spot where it's, yes, it's a little bit more if you come here, if you're a visitor here, but it's not too high to discourage you from a trip here.
Follow up, Senator Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are, I think we're higher than Wisconsin, South Dakota, North Dakota already, but they do charge more for non-residents. Yep. So I don't know. I see Bob nodding his head back there, and we can start talking about non-resident license fees as well for Minnesota, and not to hate on any other states or anything like that, but I think there's probably a trend that we could follow and do something like that. I don't know if maybe state parks isn't the place to do it. I could be wrong. I don't know. Not trapping though, right, Bob?
Yeah, and feel free to have that conversation. This is informational hearing, so we want, yes, Senator Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple questions, because I do believe this is coming back in the form of a bill, and we'll really dig into it more then. But I just wanted to clarify some things here for my own purposes. You're collecting 8.4 just on the parks, but you're telling me that you're lacking money in all these other areas when it comes to parks and recreation. How many dollars are you short? Do you have any kind of an estimate?
Director Berge.
Thank you, Chairman, Senator. I can't give you exact numbers here today. We can get that to you, but I will talk to how we came up with some of the ways that we would use this revenue. And that was recognizing gaps that we currently aren't meeting. So gaps in services to Minnesotans. And so if we looked across the different recreation lands, we worked with the directors from each of the DNR divisions to understand where either things weren't funded or where we know we have a need of service that we aren't able to meet. And so I can't give you an exact number to what those are, but that is what influenced how we would distribute these funds.
Okay, just a comment, Mr. Chair, and then we maybe can move on if nobody has any more questions, because we got another pretty important report to get to. But the thing that bothers me, and it has for a long time, is now you tell me that you have gaps in your funding and you're way short, and you're increasing your parks here by eventually 4 times. And yet, even in the legacy bill this year, the state's going to be buying another 35,000 acres of land. So you have way more land than you're telling me right now. You have way more land than you can manage. And you want to increase your funding so that you can take care of the land that you're not taking care of now, and then you're buying more. There's a big disconnect, and I think we'll be talking about this later, and maybe we can start looking at how we can start liquidating some of the stuff that we're not being used. I think the numbers in our parks are down, if I'm not mistaken. That means we're having less people there, and we're sticking more money in them and buying more property. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Green. I mean, one of the things that I will note is every year costs go up. And we have come, again, to the legislature several times with requests to increase the park permit fees to try to address those rising costs. That's just to keep services level. Additionally, one of the trends we're seeing is people are using the parks longer during the season. They are coming earlier because the weather gets nicer earlier, and they are camping later into the fall because the weather stays nicer. And so that season is extended beyond, and so the cost of that have also increased. Some of our lands that Director Berge talked about, like scientific and natural areas, there isn't a stable source of funding. We go to the LCCMR to fund management of those. So it's not that we're not managing them now, we are, but there isn't a stable and predictable source of funding, and it's quite frankly a pretty inefficient way to run the system. And so this is lowering costs for Minnesotans while providing a more stable, predictable source that is efficient for state government to use.
Any question from members? I do have a question to Director Berge, Commissioner. 2 questions, as a matter of fact. One is, Director Berge, you mentioned about the distribution already, whether it's going to park, WMA, SNA, and such. Can you give us a rough estimate of the percentage of that going to each area?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. So I'll start with, we actually have it up on screen so it helps. So as I mentioned, we have to ensure that we replace that revenue, that lost opportunity for revenue to our state park program. And so that's first and foremost. After that, and again, we don't look for this to make, the potential will not be recognized in year 1. It's going to take time. And so the way we frame this was based on percentages. Those percentages then would, if we didn't make any more than the replacement to parks, there wouldn't be any for other work. And so what we did, as I mentioned earlier, we worked with all the division directors to understand the gaps in services, places where there wasn't existing funding, and used that took that basically a high and low. From a low to a high, what does that look like? And then we used an average, and that percentage is what became, as we looked across the divisions, that high and low, that average that we came with is what became the percentage. So there wouldn't be any losers in this, basically. And it was a real, I think, a fair way to look at this that isn't about generally just the divisions, but it's about Minnesotans in the benefits that people have from our public lands. We know they're across all our public lands. And so what we came up with, and again, this is just a recommendation at this point that we put forward in the report, was in addition to the base funding to Parks and Trails, there'd be 45% to Parks and Trails, 25% to our wildlife management areas and aquatic management areas, 11% to the benefit and work on state forests, 9% for our scientific and natural areas, and then a small percentage, 6%, to help with our enforcement and education efforts that our enforcement program does across the landscape. And then the last piece was, I mentioned earlier that we have evolving recreation and demands it's changing at a rapid rate. You know, we think about technology, how it changes things. Well, recreation is no different. You know, I like to use bikes for an example. When I was a kid, there was a bike. Today, there are several styles of bike. Many people have a different bike depending on what they're riding on, and that's just one example I use. We can pick an outdoor pursuit. And so we are looking also to have a 4% reserved that would be at the discretion of the commissioner to work across the agency to meet those needs where things pop up. In government, we all too often are reactive and we're behind where we need to be, and looking to be able to be more proactive in addressing some of these trends head on.
Thank you, Director. My second question is, I really appreciate PowerPoint. I think since the technology come forth, Microsoft developed a PowerPoint, and you have animation, you have picture and such. So I really appreciate you put like the example of the Michigan version, a license plate there. So that's very helpful. Can you kind of tell us a little bit how this will work? How will this work with the critical habitat licenses that has already been in place?
Mr. Chair, members, thank you for that question, because I think that's a really important piece of this. This is meant to complement our existing critical habitat plates and state park license plates. Those plates offer license buyers the opportunity to make an additional contribution, and then you get that specialty plate. So this endorsement could be placed on top of those contributions, whether it's the state park plates or the critical habitat plates, and they can be placed on any other plate. So right now, if you want to make a contribution, you get one of those specialty plates. This really, as Director Berge said, is broadening the audience and the participants to somebody who buys any plates. But certainly, we will continue to encourage people, if they are interested, to make those additional contributions to the Critical Habitat Program or to the State Parks Program.
Thank you, Commissioners. Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually like this. It reminds me, Senator Newman, do you guys remember Scott Newman? He used to talk about, we did bike trails, and he wouldn't do them because he said I wouldn't put a credit card or a coin-operated at the front of the bike trails to help pay for the ongoing. This helps pay for the ongoing needs. I like this. I think you could probably increase the fees. Sorry, Drazkowski, but I like that. But would this be protected, that money? Because, a lot of times money that goes, there isn't true protection for that money, right? Is this protected funds specifically earmarked? Yes, I would use the term earmarked for the use of what you're saying in here in those highlighted goals? Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator Hoffman, that is our intent with it, that it would go into an account that is the outdoor recreation endorsement account, and it would be distributed. It is, and in fact, I think the percentages that Director Berge went through, it is our recommendation, you could put those in statute so that it is protected. Obviously, you all write the bill, so how you want to structure those protections is up to the legislature, but that is our recommendation, that it be protected for those purposes.
But it's a gem. I mean, Mr. Chair, if I could, it is a gem. I mean, our park system and what you guys have done, you made it easily accessible for people. Your little machines that I was just blown away. And anytime you can invest in people actually getting the outside and doing it, I would encourage language in there that would have some protections on that, so it's not grabbable. Unlike, some of the committees I serve in, there was underfunding, $1.825 billion of underfunding 2 years ago that went to the general fund, and it should have gone to like nursing homes, and so it was just gone, And it's that kind of stuff I'd like to see it really geared toward when you're talking about 45% of recreation and conservation management, that benefits everybody. And so I would be actually advocating for that kind of language, stronger language to protect that. So thank you for this. This is good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah Hoffman. Any other comment? Thank you, Director Berkey, and thank you, Commissioner Stroman, for your presentation and answering questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, next on our agenda is the MPCA, Annual Permitting Efficiency Report. So I'd like to welcome Director Johnson and also Director Moley of Chamber of Commerce. So we'll start with Director Johnson first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just getting set up here. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for the opportunity to testify today and to give a little bit of an update on our permitting efficiency efforts, an update on the executive order and how we've been implementing the changes that the legislature has made the last couple of years. First of all, when the MPCA thinks about permitting efficiency or permitting reform, we think about it in three pillars here: transparency, accountability, and timeliness. So as we talk through our report, our recent report, the changes that the legislature made the last couple years, and the executive order, want to talk about them in this context. So first of all, transparency. Very important that the agency makes ourselves accessible to the public and and makes expectations clear for regulated parties. We do have, we manage a lot of permits across air, land, and water at the MPCA, more than 29,000 permits and more than 26,000 sites. Overall, permitting efficiency is good. We meet priority permit timelines, priority permits being those that require construction. So any new projects or expansions of facilities, those projects meet timeline goals 99% of the time. Non-priority permits are those that do not require construction, and those still have some work. With 64% of the time we're meeting those goals. But I think where we're seeing a lot of progress here is this final bullet. We are maintaining the same rate of permit issuance as we did in last year, despite having a 25% increase in permit applications this last year. So certainly seeing a lot of efficiency, a lot of efficiencies there, even despite an increase in volume. There were some changes this last year to the permitting efficiency report. Additional detail was required to explain where and why there were delays, and so that is laid out in the report. We have disaggregated some of the data for industrial and municipal permits. This is something that we started to do even prior to the legislative change, but we were directed to do it and have continued to make it clearer where air, land, and water permits are separate, but also priority permits, tier 1, tier 2, as laid out in statute, and that's reflected in the number of tables that are in the report. One item that we were directed to do and are still working through is to estimate additional staff resources needed to meet statutory goals. That's 90 days for tier 1 permits and 150 days for tier 2 permits. That has mostly been an IT challenge. We do, of course, track time, but tracking time to that level of staff so that we can estimate accurately exactly what resources would be needed to meet goal for each permit that has missed the goal. A little bit more work is needed on our back end of our system to estimate that properly. So that should be in the next annual report. And then want to call out just a couple of smaller changes, but there are permit applications that the agency requires a regulated party to submit due to an enforcement action, and those do often take a long time because an enforcement action is open at the same time. This is not incredibly common, but we wanted to ensure that those were not counted as part of the overall goal, so that was changed this last session. And then also the submission date, a little bit more time was added to allow the agency to put in all this additional information each year. We do expect to be able to meet that October 1st date each year once we get our systems accommodating the additional data that's required. Another area of transparency where we've put some effort into recently and will be expanding upon and are directed to expand upon via the executive order is the permit application tracker. So to support our commitment to transparency, we developed this permit tracker over the course of 2024. It was soft launched in 2025, and we opened it up for a public comment period, received a number of suggestions. We believe this is going to be an important tool for both regulated parties and for the public to track whatever permit that they're particularly interested in. It also links to our tool, What's in My Neighborhood, which is a great resource I would encourage folks to look through. And members of the public, you can, from this permit application tracker, find a permit that you would like to track, and it will also link you to the page for that facility on What's in My Neighborhood, which lists the various different permits that facility is covered by, whether it be an industrial air permit plus an industrial stormwater permit and a water discharge permit. Those are all listed there. There's documents on that page that are the final permit issuance letters, as well as agency contacts for the various programs that are permitting that facility. So that's an excellent resource, and it is all those facilities are linked to via the permit application tracker. One other last item on transparency I want to lift up and thank the legislature for was investing in more engagement with community. Our community affairs team there was an appropriation in 2023 that funded this work for a small team of 5 to help with enhanced engagement for major projects. A lot of time, the most challenging and time-consuming part of a large project can be ensuring the community knows what the process entails, how they can weigh in, and then also responding to their comments and addressing any community concerns along the way. So having these dedicated representatives that will help with that engagement and have been helping with that engagement has helped speed along those permits and also provide additional access to the community when they do have a project of interest in their community, in their neighborhood. The final thing is a lot of that, previously a lot of that engagement was being done by the permit engineer before we had this dedicated team of engagement staff. So those folks can focus on their technical work, and our engagement staff can focus on their engagement work. Accountability is a theme we've been working that is important to the agency and has been all along, but I think there's been some progress in this area, especially the legislature in 2024 passed a law requiring both MPCA and DNR to develop coordinated project plans, creating a shared timeline to hold MPCA, other agencies, and the project proposer accountable to any deadlines that along the way, and create a plan for the project and the permit issuance. Now, in statute, this only applies to projects that require environmental review, but the agency has started to use those concepts to build out project plans for other types of permits, and that has been an incredibly helpful process, not only for timeliness, and I'll get to that when we talk about some of the success examples, but also for accountability on both the agency side and the project proposer side. Once we build out that schedule of when the permittee is going to give us information, when we're going to then turn around and issue the pre-public notice, when there's going to be a public notice period, how long that's going to last, laying that out all in one place holds everybody accountable to their various timelines. And then most recently, the piece I wanted to talk about, I think a significant portion of the 2025 changes was a 5-day grace period for permit applicants to be able to remedy deficiencies before their application is deemed complete or incomplete. And so this is something, of course, we want to make sure that folks have certainty in their process, that when they submit an application, if they just forgot to attach a spreadsheet or something, those are the types of things we can allow them to fix without having them completely start over in their process with applying for their permit with the agency. So this is, even though it's something that we felt we were trying to address, this is an important tool for us to hold accountable to providing good service to permit holders. A couple of items I wanted to talk about that the governor in his executive order to the agency has required additional accountability not only for the agency but also for consultants that work with the agency. And we do have a strategic plan. This takes many years to develop. In our strategic plan, there are many items that are critical to permit efficiency, but it is not called out explicitly. And so one of the items that the governor directed the MPCA to do was incorporate these permitting efficiency goals and strategies into our strategic plan more explicitly, so we will be tracking all of those improvements along the way and how we're doing on permitting efficiency at each check-in point. We're also directed to engage businesses and communities. This is something we do. We have periodic check-ins with air permittees, with the municipal permittees, ag stakeholders, and agricultural producers. And these are really important to our work, but making sure that that's laid out and that we're directed to do that officially keeps us accountable to meeting regularly with those folks and engaging early and often. More reporting, in this case, providing an annual progress report to the governor's office. This will line up with our annual permitting efficiency report, so you can expect this progress report to be pulled together with the annual permitting efficiency report. This next session, we'll have both of those things in one. And an annual list of consultants who submit complete permit applications for their clients at least 80% of the time. This was part, you may remember, of the governor's permitting efficiency package to the legislature last year. We felt that this was or the governor felt that this was an item that we could keep moving forward and include as part of our permit or our annual permit efficiency report as well. But as we laid out last year, a good consultant can make a world of difference, and they do excellent work for their clients, and we really want to lift up those folks who meet those complete permit application benchmark at least 80% of the time. Finally, to speak a little bit about timeliness, Want to acknowledge and thank the legislature for investments in permit engineers and permit staff over the last several years, particularly 2025 and 2024. 4 new air quality permit staff in 2024. While these do prioritize permits in environmental justice areas, that is additional capacity for our team. There are a lot of permits that are issued and a lot of facilities that are operating in environmental justice areas, and it's important that we have those folks focusing on areas with potentially disproportionate impacts. But overall, those are additive to our staff. So it has increased capacity and allows us to issue more permits more quickly. And then, of course, coordinated project plans has been a very helpful tool for us. In 2025, expedited permitting options they already existed, but were clarified. So there's a process where we can actually contract out permitting if we do not have available resources at the agency. For that exists now. Folks can request it. We have not gotten a request yet from any permittee, but those options exist. There was some clarity for environmental review provisions. And then this says 3, but I think it was actually 4 new permit staff across air, land, and water to, again, add additional capacity. And those folks are on their, either hired or on their way to being hired. And then want to speak to some of the timeliness items in the executive order here. The recent executive order, 2-stage permitting process for qualifying projects is probably the largest item that might help projects with their timelines. Just to be completely clear, this is not the separation of construction and operation that was asked for in Senator Houschild's bill. As we testified last year, that would have been a complete restructuring of our permitting program and would be very costly. But as we looked through how our rules would need to be changed to accommodate something like that if the legislature directed us to do it, we did find an old rule that allows for a 2-stage authorization where construction, after public comment period has closed, construction could be authorized while the permit goes to EPA for EPA's approval. So this is for those qualifying projects that require EPA approval. They could get started on construction before then EPA makes their determination, and a final issuance of the permit then allows the facility to operate once EPA approval is finalized. We expect that will provide anywhere from a month to 45 days of additional time for folks to get started on construction before their operating part of their permit comes through. I'll talk a little bit more about the artificial intelligence pilot. I think there's some promising results there that will lead to decreased timelines over time. And then we are coordinating more with Minnesota Business First Stop. And there's also an AI component to that as well that I'll speak a bit about here. So we applied for minute funding. There's a modernization fund that Minute operates, and that is available to state agencies to help modernize their processes. And we put forward an AI project. It was also something that we pursued at the legislature, but understanding funds are limited, so we started with that. What we've found out so far is if we focus it on smaller tasks, it's able to do those really well, and there are limited hallucinations when there are smaller tasks, so we've started there. The consistent structure of input also really helps minimize any hallucinations from the models. So ensuring that data goes in the right format has allowed consistent results to come back. Also ensuring, of course, that we have staff set aside to review whatever results come out of the model, and that the models are being consistent it's not just subject matter experts for MPCA, but we also we've learned IT experts and AI experts might be needed to ensure that we're seeing consistent results coming out of the models. And that, of course, the human component is incredibly important. We have learned that ongoing maintenance will be needed. This is not a one-time investment into a technology. It's something that you need to continue to develop over time and track and improve. And so that may require additional funding down the line for the agency. The funding that we have is running out, I believe, upcoming in March. And while our focus so far on AI applications has been limited to categorizing public comments and how we might manage large volumes of public comments, and we've also focused on the technical end on water effluent tracking. Those two pieces have shown promising results, but we're also working with DEED on what would be sort of a chat bot for project proposers. They could ask what kind of permits they might need of the chat bot, find out exactly what they need for their project to move forward, and that would then allow them to apply for the correct permits across state agencies, not just at MPCA. So I think that's a promising tool for folks, especially for folks unfamiliar with Minnesota's processes or who really want, or who are doing a new project that they're not familiar with the steps. I'll end with a couple examples of success. This is a recent, actually very recent data. As of the beginning of this year, we've seen some major progress from our air permitting program, which has had challenging timelines over time and additional backlogs. You can see the number of backlog permits is steadily going down for Minnesota, and this is comparing to the rest of Region 5, EPA Region 5. So as you can see, some of our folks have additional timelines, but the important part is MPCA continues to improve over time, especially over the last couple of years here, where there's been additional investments from the legislature and some additional attention internally on gaining efficiencies. As I mentioned, project plans have been a very successful model, and even though we haven't done a coordinated project plan yet as laid out in statute, because those are specific to environmental review projects that we are the responsible government unit for. So we haven't done any of those yet, but we have used that model to keep moving along timelines, and that's been very successful for, a couple examples are DEMCON's anaerobic digester and recently Mesabi Metallics. And I'll say both of these project proposers, even though those projects did not necessarily meet the 150-day goal, both of those project proposers were very happy with the timeliness of the agency, and their staff was also held accountable to those timelines, and it kept the project moving quickly and efficiently throughout the process, and everybody arrived at a product that was protective of the environment and human health, and also met the specific timelines that the project proposer had in their mind. So, successful model that we plan to continue using, regardless of whether or not the project technically meets the definition in statute or not. One of the items in the executive order that we're directed to do is increase the online permit application availability. That's something that we're working on. We've deployed it for a couple of our programs so far. Feedlot permits is one, and construction stormwater is another. Air permitting is the top of our list for online permit applications. That is will be a game changer for that. There's a lot of technical information that hopefully can be automated if it is submitted through an online portal, but because it's such a technical permitting program, is a lot of work to do on the IT end. So we're continuing to work on that, and one of the things the governor has directed us to do in his executive order is lay out a schedule for when we will get those online portals deployed. And then despite there not being as much attention on wastewater permitting as there might be on air permitting, it is still something that we have internally spent a lot of time working on our backlogs. We've had a number of backlogs on our permit for years and years, and we've made major progress on that. I think we've created internal goals, but also decreasing that backlog, make sure folks have modernized permits that they can then hopefully turn around and either expand their facility, or the value is also just a modern permit to protect the environment. So that's what I have. Happy to answer any questions of the committee.
Any question from members before we move on to Mr. Molly? That would be just fine. All right. Director Molly, your turn.
Chair Herr and Republican Lead Green. My name is Andrew Morley, and I work for the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, a statewide trade association representing more than 6,300 businesses and 500,000 employees across the state. Thank you for the discussion today on Executive Order 2603 from Governor Tim Walz and the MPCA's annual permitting efficiency report. And thank you for the good work from many on this committee, including the leadership of Senator Hauschild, in passing the robust permitting reform legislation as part of the Environmental Omnibus Bill. Many of these reforms started as recommendations in the Chamber's 2024 report, which provided a roadmap for regulatory improvements. I'd like to first highlight a few key pieces of the executive order. First, directing the agency to use its existing authority for two-stage authorizations for certain projects will unlock investment and allow capital to flow. We also appreciate forming a permitting efficiency technical advisory group to help reduce timelines, expand the scope of Minnesota Business First Stop's work, and move applications online. We know from the Chamber's permitting report that air permitting in our state can take up to 6 times longer than other states, including Illinois and Colorado. But questions do remain about other provisions, and we look forward to constructive dialogue with the governor's office, the MPCA, and other relevant agencies about intent and outcomes. The annual permitting efficiency report details issues that continue to challenge Minnesota's permitting process. As a brief reminder, priority projects are those that require construction, and Tier 2 projects are large economic drivers. The MPCA only met its goal for 15% of Tier 2 priority air permits and 8% of non-priority air permits in 2025. We also acknowledge areas of success for the agency and are hopeful to translate that success into all permit categories. This report shows trends continuing from last year's report, but with implementation of the permitting bill, the governor's executive order, and reliance on feedback from industry, we are optimistic that the 2026 report and beyond will show Minnesota becoming more competitive with its peer states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members? Senator Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, to the testifier, I hope you're right, because I'm reading this and it doesn't really look that great to me. And the governor's executive order, when I read it, it doesn't really seem like it's going to do anything. It's a lot of it is just telling you to do what you're already doing, and the rest doesn't really give you any teeth to do it. It just says, this is what I want you to do. I'm going to do another report. And before I get into the report, I'd have to say this is one of the most confusing reports I've ever seen. You got to go through 4 or 5 pages to get the numbers that you're looking for. Maybe can you come to my office and tell me why this is, if you can't answer today. Your priority permits, when you read the definitions, are the ones really that are mostly just renewed. You're just renewing the permits, and those are the priorities, and that makes it seem like those are the hard permits because they're the priorities, when in actuality the non-priority are the permits that are really needed for the bigger, more industrial style permits that are going on. And you've really been dropping in your success rate on those over the last couple of years, and 64%. So you take the 99 for the ones that you're just passing through and renewing, and combining that with the very poor percentages of ones you're getting out that are more important permits for our state, or at least I would think that they're for industry, and then coming up with 95% success rate on those permits doesn't really seem to match. But one of the things that on questions I have, we go right to the back. When you're looking at the status on, I guess I'll just tell you the page 19, it gives you the acronyms for what page 21 is, and I guess 22. Yeah, 20 and 21. Got it down here. You've got a good number of permits that should have been going out but are delayed on wait. It just says wait. And from what I'm looking at, you're looking for something back from the permittees. And we could talk about that because we need more help, because I've seen some of these permits. But then you're lacking staff and NORS. What was NORS again? No significant external reason for delay. So that's one of the first questions I want to ask you. And there's a lot of those in this report. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, Tom Johnson, Government Relations and External Affairs for MPCA. First, want to just address the priority permit issue. I know this can get a little strange with how tier 1 and tier 2 and whatnot, but priority permits, which are the tier 2, are the permits defined as needing some sort of construction at the site. So that's expansion and that's new projects. And I think you could ask Mr. Morley if you would like, but I believe that everyone agrees that those are the most important projects. So as we're looking at 99% completion rate for priority projects, that is for projects that require construction, which I believe everybody believes are the priority and should be the priority. Those are job creators. Those are new facilities entering the state. Those are expansions of facilities. As it relates to the reasons for delay, yes, waiting for information from applicant indicates that we have requested information, we don't have it, and we can't move forward on the permit. So I think that's fairly explanatory, but one thing that we had suggested to the legislature was pausing the goal, putting a stop clock essentially on it when we're just waiting for permittees to submit their information. I think that's something we could explore. I think it would help folks return their information in on time if they knew that they were on the clock when we're waiting on them for the information. So I think that's something I would love to explore more with the committee. For lack of staff, these are projects where everybody is assigned to a permit, everybody's working on a permit, and we just don't have the staff to pick up that permit, or somebody is assigned to it but is actively working on a different permit. So that's how we're identifying lack of staff in many cases. There is a little bit of an overlap with no significant reason for delay and lack of staff. I think we're working on our back end with our teams to make sure that they're talking about lack of staff when it's appropriate, or in some cases it might be no significant reason, external reasons for delay, is just an area where we need to improve. And I think we're open to that, and we're making improvements as we can. Those are certainly the areas where we have focused our effort, is where we see the NORS category. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful, but as you said, happy to meet outside if you'd like to talk a little bit more through the specifics.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Green?
And I did misspeak. I brought up the weight because I think there's only 4 of those, which means I brought them up because I wanted to know if there was a way to actually work with people on permitting at the beginning. But that's what I mean. We'll talk about that later. But if you look at the 123 permits that you have listed here, 2/3 of them are from lack of staff, and then the rest are from no significant reason. And it just seems like that's a lot. And the reason that I wanted to ask that question or bring that up is because I've talked to people that come for the permits, and not just a few, a lot in my district and other places too, that people contact me. And they'll say that they'll send the permit in, and then they'll wait there almost the whole, whichever it would be, 90 days, 150 days, and then they'll get the permit back and there'll be something small wrong with it. And then they got to send it in again, and then that triggers more days and more days and more days. And as you know, some of these days become years. And it's not acceptable to say, we just didn't do good enough. I mean, if there's that kind of a delay, then somewhere in this report, it should be talking about you contacting the people, sitting down with them, and moving these permits through. Because to just go back and forth with the paperwork, I've had more than just a few tell me that they'll tell you, they contact them, and they'll have to submit the same paperwork because the MPCA will say that they never received the permit. When they know they sent it in and got it back and sent it in again, then they'll tell them they weren't received. Something's going on within your agency that's not right. And it needs to be dealt with, and that executive order is not going to cure that. The annual report is nice, but it needs to be put together in a more readable form. And one of the things that I'd like to stress, and hopefully that somebody somewhere will take this into account, is that it seems like the MPCA and the other agencies are actually trying to stop business instead of trying to help these folks move forward. And the responses that the people that I'm talking to are getting is people in the agency just don't care. But Mr. Chair, with that, I'll let other people ask questions too.
Mr. Chair.
Director Johnson.
Just to address a couple of those, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Green. Your comment about, small items that might be deficiencies that then, they get an incomplete permit application and have to start over again. I think we acknowledge that could be an issue, and that is why the legislation this last year, we agreed to the additional 5 business days, sort of grace period. That means when we return an application for a small deficiency, if it is indeed small, like somebody, again, forgot to attach a spreadsheet, or they didn't put the actual name of their business, they put their subsidiary or something like that, that happens all the time. We don't want them to have to start over the process. So that 5 business days, hopefully that will address some of the concerns of your constituents. And we're hoping that will be a change. I will say the format of this report, it is consistently a challenge for the agency. I think we're being asked to disaggregate the data in such a way that there's more information in the report, and that makes it harder to read. And so I don't know, I think open to conversations about how folks want to see information in the report, but I think the more you break down data into separate bits, it gets harder to read, and would be happy to work with anybody who has suggestions about how to write it differently, because if you're breaking down everything into charts, it's not a great bedside reading.
Senator Green.
And I'd like to tell you I understand, but I don't, because you're looking at just I had to really search to find the stuff that I was looking for as far as what percentages and stuff that you really got done. Your tier 2 permits, only 10% of them completed on time. Now, there's nothing in here that really comes right out and tells me that. I have to look through a couple of different pages. Agency-related delays, 79%. But then you got to read everything to find out what that is. I don't see any breakdown really clear as to what permits are what. For instance, the air permits. There should have been, if there would have been something on here that said air permits with the graph on air permits, that would have been good instead of having to go through different pages to find all those things. But as long as I got you here and we got a few minutes left, why did you only get 10% of the permits done on time for air quality?
Director Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The air permitting is a very complicated area. So, we're continuing to create efficiencies, and I think you could see by some of the information we're continuing to improve. But I think there's a real challenge with air permits in general. Often include very technical information that needs to be reviewed by the agency. Those pieces then, we need often additional information from the permit applicant. The back and forth takes a lot of time, often. So I think that is a challenge that we'll be evaluating as part of when the governor asks us to reevaluate and review the permit efficiency goals that are in statute and work with others on what's realistic. I think that is an area that we will likely bring up with permittees, because air permits do continue to be a challenge to issue in 150 days. The fact that we meet 10%, I'm not sure that even if other states are faster, and we could look at the comparisons in the chamber report, I do not believe most other states are meeting 150 days with their air permits either. So I will just direct your attention to page 2 of the executive summary. There's a breakdown of air, land, and water for Tier 1 and Tier 2, Senator Green, if you were having trouble finding that information.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Green.
I got all kinds of questions all over that page, but nevertheless, you've got the air permits, but you're not telling me what they were. It's just priority permits that met the goal. What are those permits? And it's dismal. I mean, it really is 15%, 10%. And then you get down to the land permits, they're even worse. But we're going to run out of time, but I've got a couple more questions. Well, comment and one more question, then hopefully other people will ask something too. But, you talked about the fact that you had 4 new employees and still you get on your air permits, you only 10%. Doesn't make any sense. But aside from that, you got 99% of your priority permits that you say there. How many of those would be municipal permits?
Director Johnson.
Mr. Chair, are you speaking about air or water?
Senator Green.
Just your municipal permits. So we'll go to it's on the first page, 2025, quality permits that met the goal. So I would assume that would be across the board.
Director Johnson.
Mr. Chair, we have, as required by the change in statute to break down the difference industrial versus municipal, we have broken those down on page 4. Table 6, there's a breakdown between industrial, municipal, RMAD, which is the Resource Management and Assistant Division, those are solid waste permits, and then watershed are feedlot permits.
Okay, Mr. Chair, then.
Senator Green.
Without me reading that all again right now, you've got 47 that are municipal. What percentage of that Give me the total number, then 16% then. 47% is 16% of the municipal permits? Or is it 16% of your total 373?
Mr. Chair,
Director.
it's the percent of the total number.
Okay, so you're only making 16% on your municipal permits.
Municipal, Mr. Chair,
Director.
municipal permits of the total Tier 2 permits issued, 16% of them are municipal.
Senator Green.
I think that's what I asked you first, and then you said something different, but so maybe we're not on the same page there. How many total municipal permits, do you have that number, the total municipal permits that were applied for?
Director Johnson.
Mr. Chair, I'm sure that is somewhere in here. I do not have it at my
Good point.
fingertips.
Senator Green.
Well, I'm good.
Okay. You didn't have to answer yourself either, okay. Okay, Senator Drukowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Johnson, how many employees in the MPCA are appointed to review these permits?
Director Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Drazkowski, I do not have that number at my fingertips either. I'm happy to follow up with you on a specific number.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Drukowski.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Yeah, I'd be interested in that. How many employees total in the MPCA?
Director Johnson.
Mr. Chair and Senator, just under 1,000, I believe, employees, the most recent number that I've seen.
Senator Drukowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Johnson, how many permits per year do you complete?
Director Johnson.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, the total permit issuance, you can see on page 5, 373 permits issued in fiscal year 2025. The data here is, and I believe we speak to this a little bit in the report narrative, the data here is a little strange. As you can see on the last column of this chart, table 8, because you might receive an application, we might receive an application in December, and then even if you meet the 150-day goal, you're into another year. You can see in 2024, for example, we issued 223% of the permits that compared to the number of applications received. So this is a little bit meaningless, but just to say, 373 in fiscal year 25, 726 in fiscal year 24, and about 1,300 in fiscal year 23.
So, Mr. Chair.
Senator Drukowski.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. It looks, numbers are very dynamic. And I'd be interested in looking at number of employees over time relative to the number of applications, permits issued, number of applications received. There doesn't seem to be a steady state, if you will, among those, and I think that's what you were saying too. I'm wondering how do you, are staff jumping into different roles depending on how many permits there are or applications for permits there are? So 23 to 25 is only 2 years difference, and you went from processing 1,300 permits down to 373. So explain that.
Director Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's, for industrial permits, I would say it's often just reflective of the state of the economy. If the economy is doing better, people want to invest, and we get more permit applications. For municipal, it can depend on whether there's a big bonding bill, or, you know, if there's, the folks feel that they can invest in their community for, say, a wastewater plant or whatnot. So it really depends on external factors, the number of applications that we get in a given year. As far as permit issuance, again, that's also dependent on the number of applications that we have and what types of projects those are. But generally, I would say you can see how many permit applications we receive generally trends with the state of the economy.
So Mr. Chair?
Senator Drukowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I was looking at page 19 as well, so I counted up the number of occurrences of LACK for lack of staff, 40. Number of occurrences of NORS which sounds like it's not an external reason for delay, it's an internal reason, apparently, if it's not external. 41, and then wait, which would be back on the applicant, is 20. So if you add the lack and the no significant external response for or reason for delay, that's 2/3 of the applications there that you're struggling to get out on time are because of something inside of MPCA and not to do with the people applying for it. The people applying, the weight is 16%, and 66% appears to be internal. So I hope, Mr. Johnson, you guys are doing some sort of analysis, looking at your agency's navel, if you will, and trying to figure out what in the world is going on here, because government seems to always hold people who are forced to genuflect before it to these very, very high standards, when in reality at this point in time it appears very clear that instead of that happening, the agency needs to look in the mirror. So please look in the mirror and come back to us next time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director Johnson.
Just to speak a little bit to the no significant external reasons for delay, this is where we are focusing our efforts, Senator, and I think it is a fair point that in these cases, we should be examining what the delays are, and that is where we've been focusing our continuous improvement efforts. I will say, as we've started to do that, one of the most common reasons is we're just wrestling with the engineering challenges of a specific project. So a big industrial project with a really complicated air emission system that has 11 different outputs, and they're doing multiple different manufacturing and emission types, and the sources are different, and the pollutants are different, and some of them are regulated by the feds, and some of them are regulated by us. And it does get challenging, and we would not put that as an external reason for delay, but we are working through the information that the applicant has submitted and working to make sure that we have at the end, that we're understanding their project and also then appropriately permitting them to operate in the state of Minnesota.
Senator Drukowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that, Mr. Johnson. Then I would suggest that MPCA go and take a look at the laws we have. And it sounds like the laws are too complicated for us to get through them on time for the people of Minnesota. Come back to us with some suggestions on how we can make the laws easier for the people of Minnesota so that we don't have this problem. This is horrible. If we've written laws that are too involved and too complex, we need to make them easier. And if that's the case, you guys and gals in your organization are in position to come back and provide us some things that we can do to make those easier for you and easier for the people that are trying to get through our very cumbersome and demanding laws in the area of the environment. We're, as I understand, the most strict state in the country in terms of environmental regulation. Let's figure out how to make it easier for people, make it easier for you, because then we won't have to have these type of discussions in the future.
And thank you, Senator Koski. And if you can summarize
I'll finish up
conclusions, because we're short time.
I'll finish up,
committee will
Mr.
be
Chair.
shut down at 5.
Thank you very much. And absolutely, Senator Drazkowski, I will just point out the agency does not write the laws of the state of Minnesota. We also have delegated authority from the federal government, and so we're implementing federal laws and also the laws that you all write. And while we're happy to talk through where we think there might be efficiencies to find, and we brought some of those ideas last year, none of them passed. And so, we're open to having that conversation, but we do not write the laws in the state of Minnesota. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate the time that I've had today.
Thank you, Director Johnson, and thank you, Director Moley. I know this, how we reached into this point was a bipartisan cooperation with agency, and glad to hear your report today, and also with the governor executive order. So I appreciate your explanation to us. I want to, looks like Senator McCune, I want to give her the last word, because I'm going to adjourn here after she speaks. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate we're trying to get out of the room for security. I'll be very quick. I want to thank you for the report today. I, as many would predict, have a very different perspective than we've heard, and I wish we had more time to be able to talk about that a little bit. I would like follow-up on the number of staff at the MPCA who do the work on permitting. I think that's a really important number to know. I would also like to know that. And I would also like to know how many of the permits, if any, what percentage, what number, the MPCA is contracting out the permitting for. That was sort of a new concept for me, this idea that our agency would be permitting, would be contracting out or have that ability. So that's good to know that that is a possibility of happening. So I would love to set up a meeting with you to learn a little bit more. I would like to say that I am really not happy with this executive order for probably the opposite reasons of the ones that we have heard today. I'd like to learn more about this two-stage air permitting and what that could mean. My community, had to rely on EPA whistleblowers to protect us from what would have been a disastrous project that our own agencies had permitted in the Polymet project. So having that delay of time while the federal government is able to look at the permits and actually give approval matters to me. It really matters. And I've been talking to some people about that to see what their assessment is, and we'll set up a meeting, and I'd love to hear your assessment as well. But I was very disappointed to see that order. My community has a different take than a lot of the rhetoric that we hear over and over again about this permitting being so hard and so onerous. And I also, just very quickly, lastly, the priority permits seem to me to be backwards in some ways. Like, I know that you had said briefly that the priority permits, everybody agreed that new construction was really important. Well, I feel like it's really important that our permitting priorities focus on getting the businesses that already exist in Minnesota, Minnesotans who have long-standing and they're just getting a permit that they need, that maybe those should be prioritized more than us chasing after new things all the time. So I understand that bringing in the new is important, but taking care of the people who are here already providing the job seems to me to be very important as well. So just some closing thoughts. Thank you very much, and we'll have more discussion later. Thanks.
And Senator Ann Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, to clarify Senator McEwen's question to Mr. Johnson, the new permits aren't necessarily for new businesses. Aren't they related to new projects versus new businesses, just to clarify?
Clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, they're either expansion of an existing facility or a new facility. But
So they could be either, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the good closure, Senator McCune, and stay tuned. Watch your email for the next meeting, okay? Committee members, thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.
Are you going to the...